I never imagined that the songs we wrote in the back of a damp garage would someday fill stadiums, or that the same melodies that once bound us together like brothers would be twisted into chains used to drag me into silence. My name is Eli Navarro, and for years I believed in music, in the raw power of it to heal, connect, and immortalize. But now, whenever I hear one of our old songs blaring through a speaker, I hear something else threaded into the chords: treachery, cold and sharp as broken glass. It began the night I trusted Franklin Fairbank more than I should have. Franklin wasn't just a bandmate, he was my shadow and mirror, the one who knew every flaw in my voice before I did, who could finish my half-formed lyrics in ways I never thought possible. Together, with Monroe on drums and Lyle on bass, we were the backbone of Firesight, a band no one thought would make it past dingy bars, but somehow clawed its way into national tours. Our song Ashes of Tomorrow was our anthem, written in the haze of heartbreak and cheap whiskey, born out of a midnight jam session that nearly broke us before it saved us. I bled into those lyrics. The words were mine, scrawled in notebooks filled with years of my own scribbles, long before the band even had a name. Franklin gave them wings with melody, yes, but the soul was mine, or so I thought. Success came faster than we could comprehend. Labels fought to court us, journalists lined up for interviews, and crowds screamed words I had written as though they were gospel. I thought we were solid, unbreakable. But fame is a strange parasite. It feeds on egos, magnifies greed, and turns every handshake into a gamble. And Franklin, God, I should have seen it. He had a hunger that went beyond applause. He wanted not just recognition, but ownership. The first signs were subtle. He began referring to songs as ours when talking to press, but his when the label executives were around. He corrected me during interviews, soft and smiling, but always nudging the narrative so he looked like the architect and I the apprentice. I brushed it off. After all, what was mine was his. That's what brothers did. Then came the contracts, the endless legalese with clauses we barely skimmed because we were too eager to sign, too desperate for the next tour bus, the next spotlight. I trusted our manager, our lawyers, Franklin most of all. I had no reason not to, until, 2 years in, that Franklin had quietly sold the rights to 3 of our earliest songs, including Ashes of Tomorrow. Sold them not to the label, not to us as a group, but to himself, under a shell company he'd set up without telling anyone. My name was nowhere on the documents. The day I found out, I remember sitting in my apartment staring at the contract Monroe had slipped me like contraband, my hands trembling. The betrayal hit me in waves, first disbelief, then fury, then a hollow emptiness that felt worse than either. I confronted Franklin in the studio. He didn't even flinch. He sat there, twirling a pen between his fingers, eyes cool, like he had been expecting this. "You should be thanking me, Eli," he said, calm as stone. "You'd have given it all away for free. I made sure the songs actually have value." I snapped. My voice cracked against the studio walls as I shouted about loyalty, trust, about the years I spent pouring my soul into lyrics he was now stripping me from. But he just smirked, leaned back in his chair, and said, "Legacy isn't about who writes the words, Eli. It's about who history remembers, and history will remember me." That sentence burned itself into my chest like a brand. From then on, things spiraled. The band continued, but I was erased piece by piece. Liner notes began crediting Franklin solely. Interviews angled him as the creative genius, while I was painted as the backup, the moody lyricist tagging along. Even Monroe and Lyle, my friends, began to distance themselves. They didn't want to pick sides. Silence, I learned, can be as loud a betrayal as any knife in the back. I tried to fight. I contacted lawyers, dug up old notebooks, tried to prove authorship, but every avenue was blocked by paperwork Franklin had long since orchestrated. Every time I reached for justice, he was already 10 steps ahead, smiling that smug smile that said I was a child lost in a game only he knew how to play. The hardest part wasn't the legal loss. It was watching him perform my words on stage as if they'd been born in his chest. He'd close his eyes, fist against his heart, and the crowd would roar his name while mine disappeared into the static. Nights blurred into bottles and ashtrays, into half-finished songs I couldn't bring myself to complete. Who was I writing for now? Certainly not myself. Every lyric felt poisoned, haunted by the fear he'd steal it too. I considered quitting music altogether. But music wasn't something I could just abandon. It was stitched into me too deeply. And so I kept writing, quietly, secretly, songs that I never showed anyone, songs meant for a world beyond Franklin's reach. Until one night, an opportunity I hadn't expected arrived. An award ceremony. Ashes of Tomorrow had been nominated for Song of the Decade. Of course, Franklin was listed as the sole writer. He would walk the stage, accept the trophy, bask in the spotlight. The thought churned my stomach. But part of me knew this was the moment, the stage where his lies could unravel. I had been silent too long, drowned out in contracts and shadows. But if I was ever going to reclaim what was mine, it would be here, where the world was watching. I didn't know how yet, but the seed was planted. And as I sat in that crowded theater weeks later, watching Franklin's rehearsed smile flash across screens, my fists clenched in my lap. Because I wasn't here to applaud him. I was here to confront him. And this time, history would remember me. The lights inside the Grand Meridian Theater burned too bright, like spotlights tearing holes in the dark. Every chandelier glimmered with the same artificial brilliance I'd come to associate with Franklin's smile. Polished, dazzling, hollow at the core. Rows of celebrities and executives lined the velvet seats, their chatter humming like restless bees. My name wasn't anywhere on the guest list. I had borrowed a pass from Monroe, who had stopped pretending he didn't pity me years ago. I wore the only suit I owned, frayed at the cuffs, still smelling faintly of cigarettes no matter how many times I dry cleaned it. The irony wasn't lost on me. The song that had gutted me, stripped me of my own name, was about to be enshrined as the anthem of an entire generation. Franklin was already seated in the front row, flanked by producers and label executives. Cameras loved him, always had. His profile looked sculpted for flashbulbs. Sharp jawline, hair slicked to perfection, tuxedo fitted like he'd been born in it. I hated that I still recognized the kid I used to jam with in a garage. He had grown, yes, but into something unrecognizable. Or maybe he had always been this way, and I had just been too blind to see. The ceremony droned on, a blur of categories and applause I barely heard. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. In the program tucked under my seat, Song of the Decade was highlighted in bold near the end. I kept flipping to it, staring at the words, written by Franklin Fairbank, each letter mocking me with its permanence. I told myself over and over I wouldn't break. I had a plan, or at least the skeleton of one. When they called his name, and they would, I had no doubt, there would be a moment. A live microphone, cameras, a stage too big for lies to hide. Finally, after what felt like years, the presenter walked on stage, smiling with that theatrical flourish only award shows could conjure. My chest tightened. And the Song of the Decade goes to Ashes of Tomorrow. The crowd erupted. My ears rang with it, a wall of sound that threatened to crush me. Franklin rose gracefully, buttoning his jacket as he ascended the steps, flashing his perfect grin to the audience. The trophy was handed to him, golden, gleaming, a monument built on my blood. He leaned into the microphone, voice smooth, rehearsed. "This song has always been about hope," he began, letting the audience's cheer wash over him. "About rising from what destroys you. I wrote it during a time when my body moved before my mind did. One second I was in my seat, the next I was on my feet, pushing past startled attendees, ignoring the hissed protests. By the time he said I wrote it, I was already halfway down the aisle, my heart pounding louder than the applause. Security tensed, But Monroe, sitting near the aisle, shifted just enough to block them for a second. That second was all I needed. I climbed onto the stage. Gasps rippled through the room like a sudden storm. Franklin froze, his words caught mid-sentence, eyes widening just enough for me to see the crack in his composure. Then he smiled again, though tighter this time. "Eli Navarro," he said, microphone still hot, voice amplified across the theater. "Ladies and gentlemen, my former bandmate." The crowd buzzed like static. I walked to the mic, close enough to see the flicker of panic behind his eyes. My throat was dry, but rage has a way of forcing words out. "Former bandmate?" I said, my voice raw. "Tell them the truth, Franklin. Tell them how you sold the rights to this song behind our backs. Tell them how you signed my name away like it was a scrap of paper. Tell them how every word you've been singing tonight was mine." Silence. Cameras zoomed. The world held its breath. Franklin chuckled softly, shaking his head as though calming a child. "He's confused," he said to the audience, then turned back to me, lowering his voice just enough for the front row to hear. "Careful, Eli. You don't want to embarrass yourself." Embarrass myself? My voice cracked but carried.
"You've been lying under oath for years. I have the notebooks, the recordings, every damn draft leading to this song, written in my handwriting. How long did you think you could keep pretending?" Murmurs rippled through the theater. Franklin's jaw tightened. His grip on the trophy whitened his knuckles. For the first time in years, he looked cornered. "Security," he said, voice sharp now, the charm slipping. Two men in black suits began moving toward me, but before they reached, I turned to the microphone again. "You want to erase me from history? Fine, but I'm not leaving this stage until everyone here knows I bled for these words. And if you think legacy is about who history remembers, then remember this: your legacy starts crumbling tonight." The audience was no longer silent. Some clapped hesitantly, some booed. Others just stared, hungry for the scandal unraveling live in front of them. The presenter looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. Franklin tried to laugh it off, raising his hand as if to dismiss me. But I saw the twitch in his eye, the crack widening. He leaned closer, muttering, "You'll regret this, Eli. I've buried men for less." That was his mistake, because the microphone picked it up, every word. The crowd gasped. Franklin's face went pale as the sound echoed across the hall. I didn't need to say anything more. The audience heard. They understood. Security grabbed my arms, pulling me back, but it didn't matter. I had landed the blow. His mask had slipped, not in private, not behind closed doors, but under the merciless glare of lights and cameras. As they dragged me out of the theater, I heard it. A scattering of applause, louder now, growing, spreading like a spark catching flame. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to remind me I wasn't invisible. Outside, the night air was cold against my burning skin. My chest heaved with adrenaline, fear, triumph, regret, all at once. I had no idea what tomorrow would bring. Maybe lawsuits, maybe more silence, maybe worse. But for the first time in years, I felt alive. I hadn't won, not yet, but I had spoken. My voice, stolen for so long, had finally cut through. And maybe that was enough. Maybe for the first time, Franklin Fairbank would remember that history has a way of correcting itself. This story may be over, but the betrayals never stop. Like this video, share it with your circle, and subscribe to Chronicles of Revenge so you don't miss what's coming next. Another shocking story is just one click away below.